Bioclinica, Simplified Payroll and Time Tracking with the Cloud, presented by the American Payroll Association, the nation's leader in payroll education and professional development. The material you are about to experience is copyrighted by the APA. No portion of this webinar may be recorded, transcribed, reproduced by any means without prior written permission from the American Payroll Association. Just a reminder, please be sure to have your webinar handout with you, as our instructors will refer to it often during this session. Our webinar today is brought to you by Workday. Workday is a leading provider of human capital management applications, including time tracking and payroll. Our instructors today are Laurent Batella, Kara Hughes, and Matt Carroll. Laurent is a Senior Director, Product Strategy, Product Management for Workday's Payroll and Workforce Management Solutions, and he's responsible for setting the strategic direction for Workday's Payroll and Workforce Management Solutions. Laurent has more than 20 years leading the strategic development of payroll and HR applications. Kara is the Director of Resource Operations for Bioclinica. She oversees payroll, benefits, and HR transactional support team members. Kara has 13 years of increasing responsibilities in payroll and HR operations. Matt is the lead payroll administrator for Bioclinica. He's responsible for Bioclinica's payroll in the U.S., the U.K., and the Netherlands. Matt reconciles quarter and annual tax filings, conducts internal audits, and assists with external audits. Let's first welcome Laurent.
Thank you, Jim. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this APA webinar. Let's look at the agenda. So we will go through the differences of the traditional payroll outsourcing versus the payroll in the cloud solution. Then we'll debunk some of the myths about payroll in the cloud. Then we'll cover some best practices when moving to the cloud. And then the key part of the session will be how Bioclinica simplified payroll and time tracking with the cloud, their experience, and they will share with the audience.
So our first poll question today is, we'd like to know, how does your company process payroll today? Do you use traditional outsourcing services? Maybe you're using on-premises, an in-house solution. Are you using a cloud solution? Possibly a managed payroll solution, a BPO? Or are you not sure? Click on whichever of the 5 options that most closely reflects how your organization is currently processing your payroll. So when you've gone into companies that you're working with to bring them into the cloud, what's the area that you're seeing most frequently that they are currently using? Is it the traditional outsourcing, the on-premises, another cloud solution? What do you see most frequently?
Well, really, that's a good question. So most frequently, I would say it's coming from the traditional solution. Payroll in the cloud is really the new way of doing things, of running payroll. So we see, I would say, maybe half are coming from traditional outsourcing vendors, and about half are coming from legacy on-premise vendors, very few from other vendors, from other cloud vendors.
Well, that's generally what our preliminary results look like. So for all of our participants, we've got just a few more seconds for you to click through with what your answer is so that we can share it with everybody. So Laurent, let's take a look at what the results of this poll are. And do any of those results surprise you any?
No, not really. What I like to see is that 23% of the participants are already on the cloud. And again, I was saying earlier, now we are moving from the traditional on-premise and outsourcing solution to the cloud. And I guess for a lot of the audience here, they will learn quite a few things about the cloud. So I think it will be a great session about education. But I think that's really is a good representation of the current market, in the U.S.
So let's go ahead with your presentation, part of the presentation, Laurent.
Okay, so let's look at the differences between traditional payroll outsourcing and payroll in the cloud. And I guess to the audience, this will be terrific. So really for the audience today, what I would like to share is that the first key difference is that with the payroll in the cloud, you have a unified HCM, payroll, and time tracking solution versus payroll outsourcing. Typically, customers own a different HR solution, and then they send the data, the payroll data, for processing to the payroll vendor, and then a day later, they get the result back. So very different structure, no integration, everything is one instance with payroll in the cloud. Then the configuration and really empowerment is going for payroll in the cloud customers. When you have a payroll in the cloud solution, you have the ability to fully create any earning, any deduction, any new reports. On the payroll outsourcing, typically these capabilities are limited. When a payroll outsourcing customers need to create an earning, they have to go through their vendor, get a request, and then for a fee, they will get it. On the payroll cloud, in the cloud side, they are fully empowered. Real-time calculation, I like this one. With the payroll in the cloud, again, you have direct access to your solution, HCM, payroll time tracking. Whenever you want, you can run payroll. If somebody is terminated, right now, you can run a real payroll. If you need to recalculate payroll because of an error, a retrocalc, anything, you can do it in real time. Obviously, with payroll outsourcing, you have to send the data, so there will always be a lag of time. Visibility on payroll results, this is really reporting. With payroll in the cloud, you can have reports, you can create your own report across the whole information, HCM, HR, payroll, and time tracking. On payroll outsourcing, you have reports only on payroll, so it's very limited, and you get what the payroll vendor sends you. I like the next two ones. With payroll in the cloud, you have two options. You can either run payroll in-house, and this is the situation where Bioclinica is in, so they have a team, they can run it, they're fully empowered, or you can also use the payroll in the cloud solution and outsource payroll services. And this is a very convenient solution for customers that come from a legacy outsourcing solution. They're a bit afraid of really taking ownership of the payroll in the cloud, so there is an option to outsource the same services with a payroll in the cloud. And the benefits of this is that first, there is no change. You don't need to hire a lot of people. You have the same task. But as you move forward after a year, and this is almost the line before the last, the option to change the scope of services. If after a year of using the solution, you have a team that can create earnings, run reports, create reports, you can reduce the scope of the services and say, you know what? I don't need to outsource the reporting anymore. I don't need to outsource the check printing or my direct debit or anything. So that's the value that payroll, that customers that use payroll in the cloud really, really value. And finally, obviously, the last line, payroll in the cloud vendors, they're all modern solutions. They provide a lot of innovation. Payroll outsourcing vendors, typically, they are still using very old technology, and their pace of innovation is much, much slower. So moving now, let's debunk some myths about payroll in the cloud. The first one is payroll in the cloud is not secure. That's pretty much still today one of the very first comments that comes back. How can you trust the cloud vendor? Well, the reality is exactly the opposite. For the audience, what you need to understand is really the security is the very first mission of all the cloud vendors, whether they are HCM, payroll, time tracking, CRM. This is the first thing that they have to do. So they cannot exist if they don't have a high level of security. And typically my own experience at Workday, we're dealing with very large customers, large banking, large technology company, the best company of the Silicon Valley. When they come to Workday, the technology team always have doubts about the security, but when they understand the level of security that payroll cloud vendor use, then they come back very secure and very with the peace of mind. And typically, in most cases, they recognize that the cloud vendors such as Workday have a higher level of security than their own data centers. Second myth, payroll in the cloud is not proven. It's still young, it's still new. What is the reality? The reality is that today, in 2018, payroll and HCM and time tracking and finance in the cloud is the current state of the art solution. What I mean by this is a large number of customers of any size, small, medium, large, have been using payroll in the cloud solution for years, for decades, and they are very happy and successful in the cloud. And now the trend, I'm sure for the audience this is not new, but for all customers that are using legacy solution, again, legacy on-premise or traditional outsourcing. When they're about to upgrade, most of them, the vast majority of them, are moving to the cloud. So it's really becoming the state of the art, so it's very, very proven. Myth number 3, you have no control of the cloud application. What I mean by this is when customers run, specifically the one that run on-premise solution, they have their own database, the data center, the engineers, they can customize, add a field here and there. And by moving to the cloud, they're afraid that they will lose this flexibility. The reality is the opposite. Modern cloud applications such as the Workday provide the customers all the tools to configure their own payroll, time, absence rules, to define their own payroll reports, and the key thing, without relying on their own internal IT or third-party consulting company. I have seen dozens of customers that told me the big difference when moving to Workday from what they had before is that now the payroll team and the time team is empowered. They don't need to, if they need to create a new overtime rule or a new bonus, they can do it themselves. They don't have to go to IT. It's a huge, huge benefit for them. And finally, the myth number 4, cloud applications are only for small companies. This was certainly true 10 or 20 years ago when the cloud started, but today, modern payroll cloud applications, they are designed to support very large customers. Again, the largest company in the nation today are moving to the cloud and have been live on using HCM and payroll cloud application in the cloud. And the reason is that modern payroll cloud applications, they offer a high level of flexibility and configurability that meet the needs of this large customer.
So our next poll question is what level of technology does your company operate with today? And we've got 5 different options. So do you have separate systems for HR, payroll, and time? Maybe you have payroll and HR together integrated, or you've got payroll and time integrated, or you have all 3, payroll, HR, and time integrated, or you're not sure. So click on whichever one of the options that is most closely to what your organization has for your payroll, HR, and timekeeping or operations. So when you're going into a customer, helping them start implementing, what are you seeing in most organizations now? Are they integrated with their operations and their different applications, or are still running them separately?
No, the most common case is really the most common use case or organization is customers that's using for historic reason M&A, a separate HR system, a separate payroll system, and a separate time tracking system. This is still the majority of the case. Then you have some that have HR and payroll together, and very few have HR, payroll, and time tracking together.
And looks like we're getting a lot of answers in, and as they continue to go, we've got quite a spread. And our first and highest one right now is that we have HR, payroll, and time together, integrated together. So let's give our participants just a few more seconds to answer this question. And let's take a look at what the results are, Laurent. And do you see any surprises in those results?
Yes, I am a little bit surprised that 41% have a unified solution for HR, payroll, and time, which is the great news. The rest, I think, is okay. We have about the same separate HR, payroll, and time, number 2, and then HR and payroll together. So it's a good sample. We've quite a few have HR, payroll, and time together. So that's an interesting sample of customers.
I found it a little interesting that we still have 27% that have separate systems for HR, payroll, and time. I thought that was ancient history. Shall we continue with your presentation? Absolutely.
So let's now go through some best practices when a customer decides to move to the cloud. Obviously, the very first best practice is to move to the cloud. And I think the 27% are somehow represented here on the left-hand side, where you have an HR system, a different payroll system, a different time system. And for this customer, it's a very challenging situation because there's a lot of integrations to maintain over time, different technology, different updates. So moving to a unified solution in the cloud really will bring a lot of value. Let's look into that. So the first best practice here, the first benefit is that customers that move to the cloud, specifically moving from on-premise solution where customers have to download from the vendor the tax update on a weekly basis, or whenever there is a new update, they have to download the tax update to test them in the test environment, and then to move them to production. And then the next day there's another update, etc. So they keep always testing and updating at their own risk the compliances. When you move to the cloud, all of this is done by the cloud vendor, and customers have advanced visibility in the updates. So they have full visibility in what's coming. They know exactly when the update will come, what we will cover. If they have a question, they can go to the community website of the vendor. So they get really peace of mind when you move to the cloud. Second best practice here is configurability. We talked about this a little bit already, but when you go to a payroll cloud solution and time in the cloud, you have a fully configurable calculation engine. You have unlimited capabilities to define as many earnings, deductions, eligibility rules, calculation limits. You can create any gross up bonus, any balance accumulation. You can use them. Retro calculation on employee data, comp changes, absence, time entry. So full capabilities, really, that is a key value of the cloud application. The processes are configurable, so you can define when and on and to schedule your processes. And then configurable security as well to enable different people to what they are entitled to. Audit agility, I do like this one. Typically in the legacy solution, customers have to print the old payroll result and the new one, and then compare hand by hand, if the payroll result is the same, is there a difference, is this normal or is it a bug? With the payroll cloud solution, such as Workday, customers can define as many audit configuration as they need, such as 5% difference, 2% difference, negative pay, and all these audits are run within the payroll calculation. So customers have nothing to do but to review the result of this audit. And the benefits, the bottom line for customers that move to Workday Payroll, what they share with us is that with Workday now, they have a more accurate payroll with less stress. What they mean by this is that they can really audit and review all their payroll with less resources and more audits than they used to do in the past. Collaboration and visibility, there's also benefits when you run payroll on the cloud, you can define security, and in this case, you can, for example, enable your time and attendance partner to look at the time data payroll results or when you run payroll, so they can look at all the information coming from time. Same thing from the HR partner, they can look at the compensation for the C-level person, for the salespeople when there is bonuses. They can review after payroll has been run the first time if the compensation is correct. The benefits partner, they can look at the benefit deductions. Same thing for the finance partner at the bottom here. When you run payroll the first time, the finance team can look at if the costing allocation is fine. And with the payroll team, what they do, they are the quarterback. They work with all their business partners, and they focus only on compliance with holding orders, taxes. And then the nice thing about this is that when they rerun payroll, payroll is almost complete and correct, and all the partners, they have visibility, they engage. And when they close payroll, they don't have to do the GL interface because costing allocation was already been done. So they save time. Their payroll window, when they move to the cloud, such as Workday, they move from 4 or 5 days to 1.5 days, so they gain time and again peace of mind. And just to wrap it up, so I would like to say that really when you move to the cloud, you have what we call the power of one. You have HCM, payroll and time in one tenant, in one, so there is no integration, no batch, everything can be done real time. And it does provide you proactive compliance, a high level of configurability, a lot of agility, and increasing your the accuracy of your payroll, and providing great collaboration and visibility. So those are the key benefits when you move to the cloud. And now I will now the next Paul. Jim?
I'm sorry, I had my phone muted. We want to know how long your payroll processing cycle is today. Does it take 1 to 2 days from beginning the cycle to completing the transfer to the direct deposit? Is it 3 to 5 days? Maybe more than 5 days, or are you not sure? Click on whichever one of those is your option. And I'll be honest, Laurent, I've seen it all over the board. Some as quick as 1 day, and some as more than 5 days. A lot of it depends upon getting the time in and getting managers' approval. What do you see when you visit with a client? What kind of time frame are they processing?
I mean, typically what I see is 3 to 5 days, and sometimes a little bit longer. So I'm quite surprised about the result today. So we have a great group of customers here. But typically, we have customers moving from 4 or 5 days to, when they go to Workday, to 1 to 2 days. So that's what I see.
So it looks like we've got quite a few of our participants have clicked through, but we'll give you just a few more seconds to share with us your experience and how quickly you get through your payroll processing. So let's take a look at our results, and if I can get to the right place, there we go. So, Laurent, what's your expectation and surprise about these results?
Again, I am positively surprised. I think we have a great group of customers. I mean, they're happy because they can process payroll in 1 and 2 days, which is, I would say, above the average. So, and then we have about 40% that do 3 to 5 days, and very few more. I'm sure they have some complex challenges. But I think this is above the average. I think we have a great group of customers that have defined their payroll processes. So good job.
So let's move to our first time for questions and answers. So we've got a lot of questions that have been submitted, and Laurent, the first question I have comes from Jean. She says that they're evaluating a cloud-based vendor, and it looks like there's a large amount of IT support that's required. She'd like you to evaluate or elaborate on how payroll can set up their own rules without IT support.
That's a great question, and maybe Matt and Kara will provide more color in a few minutes. But it is very simple. With Workday Payroll, we have what I used to say to customers: if they can write the rule on a whiteboard, you can configure into Workday. You define your elements, you have your conditions, you define your accumulators. What is taxable, for example, and then all the rules go into there, and then you can really write the rule. If you have to do the sum of 2 bonuses or the percentage, you can write the formula. So it's a functional language. Obviously, you have to be trained, but it's fairly easy. As soon as you do one rule, you can copy another one. So the learning is quite fast, and the easiest way is to copy a similar rule and then tweak it to your needs.
And the next question I have, Laurent, before I go to the next question, I want to remind our participants how to ask a question. On the right side of your screen, you'll see the questions window. And at the bottom of the questions window, there where it says ask a question, type your question in there, click submit. It'll come to me, and I'll be able to share it with Laurent and our other presenters as we get to our next Q&A. So, Laurent, we've got a question from Sue, and she's wondering, what's the largest cloud user for a cloud-based payroll? So number of employees on that largest one. What is your experience and what you've seen from in cloud-based vendors and the size of payrolls?
Very simple answers. I will just share that the largest payroll customers in the cloud that is live in production with Workday has more than 300,000 employees, and it's a large company, obviously. But so 300,000 is I think is right now a good bar, so which pretty much means any size when you're up to 300,000 or 200,000, it's pretty much so that's the largest customers and at Workday.
So do we have time for one more question at this point in time, Laurent?
I think we should move to I really want the audience to listen to Matt and Kara. I would rather have Matt and Kara start, and then we can get a question at the end.
Okay, let's move over to Kara. And Kara, if you'd like to begin your part of the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, both Jim and Laurent. This is Kara calling from Bioclinica. Thank you so much, everybody, for participating. Before I get started with our transition to Workday, I thought I'd first give a brief overview of about the organization Bioclinica. We are a specialty clinical trial services provider that accelerates the development of new medical therapies. We were founded in 1990. We went from a public company to a private company in 2013. However, we still follow all of the Sarbanes-Oxley rules for public companies. We're headquarters in Princeton, New Jersey, and we undergo constant M&A activity. So currently we have about 3,200 employees globally and about 1,200 employees in the U.S. We're in 18 countries using 13 different currencies. We have payroll activity in 29 of the U.S. states and about 80 PA localities. So for those customers on the phone dealing with PA local tax, I will say that payroll in the cloud and with Workday has significantly simplified how we handle the PA local taxes. It's very simple to set up on the back end of the system. Just to add to what Laurent was saying, you just type in edit state and local tax and add your accounts like in a spreadsheet is what it looks like. It's very simple to add. We don't even need our HRIS team to help us out there. So moving on to our next slide, at this point, we have implemented all of the HR-related modules that Workday offers, but we took a phased approach. So we went live with the Human Capital Management platform with benefits, absence, time tracking, and projects in January of 2016. We then rolled out payroll in July of 2016. So at that point, we had 6 payroll entities, and all of the entities were on different payroll cycles. So when we moved to Workday payroll, we consolidated it so the pay dates for every entity was on the same time frame. So we're now paid on a biweekly basis, and previously we had 4 semi-monthly payrolls, and then the other 2 were on alternating Fridays. So at this point, we only have actually 2 pay groups with the same pay date. So 1 pay group for non-exempt and 1 pay group for exempt, and it doesn't matter which company they're paid under. So it definitely simplified how we process payroll. And then the following year, in January of 2017, we rolled out talent and advanced compensation. So that's the merit module we used for salary increases. And then in April of 2017, we rolled out the learning module. And then later in 2017, we rolled out Workday recruiting. And so at that point, new hires and pre-hires, before they even start, are the ones to input all of their information. So that employee self-service in entering that information now starts with the pre-hire before they even accept an offer with the company. Helps reduce the numbers of errors. And what we're working on this year in 2018 is working with other companies that integrate with Workday for the Netherlands, Germany, the United Kingdom, and France are what we have rolled out Workday payroll for, integration with third-party payroll. And so what did we look like before we went live with Workday? You guessed it. We had a lot of different systems with a lot of different disjointed processes. So everything was fragmented. We had numerous integrations, and due to all the acquisitions, we were looking for one source of record. And so we ultimately came down to selecting Workday and payroll in the cloud. So what were the top 10 values that Bioclinica realized with payroll and time tracking in the cloud? Our number 10 was a single solution for the hire-to-pay process. So before we moved to Workday payroll, we had 11 systems, and we went to 1. We were constantly entering the same data in multiple systems, so going to Workday reduced that replication of data, and we only had to do it once. And it even moved to employees and managers entering it. It was no longer HR or finance entering all of the transactions. And it also freed up a lot of our internal resources to work on more strategic type projects versus data entry. And so while we went from, we had 5 people that were processing payroll to only 2 payroll processing resources, we just reallocated those individuals that were previously processing payroll to some of our finance team members. So while we reduced the time spent in payroll, there's always plenty to do, especially as acquisitions are coming through constantly for us. Our number 9 value realized is continuous updates for regulatory and compliance changes. So one of the features offered is a payroll compliance dashboard, and this gives a quick visual insight into the compliant updates that are applicable and most important to your organization. So you can quickly identify whether a compliance update impacts your employees and take appropriate action, such as creating a communication plan and notifying employees, because as I'm sure you're all aware, anytime there's even just sometimes a few cents difference, you hear from those employees. So this is a way to help you be proactive in communicating timely to your employees. And one of the benefits to this dashboard is also that you can drill down and see what it's impacting, when it's impacting, and who it's going to impact. So this is an extremely important factor as it helps minimize the risk of non-compliance. In addition to even the compliance payroll dashboard, there's also another source that Workday offers. It's called the Workday Community, and it's an online interactive space where Workday customers work with other Workday customers to help increase their knowledge on the applications. And you can set up additional alerts that get emailed to your personal work personal email. And so an example of one that we recently received is in the state of Oregon, there was a statewide transit tax that went in effect on July 1st, and we received that notification a month and a half before it even occurred. And Workday was on top of it, and it delivered the results automatically to our software. There was nothing that we had to do. It was just automatically available and updated on employee records. And now I'm going to transition it to Matt.
Thank you, Kara. Hello, everybody. Our number 8 value realized is ease of configuration and administration of payroll changes, including unlimited audits. So payroll in the cloud, and more specifically Workday, allows us the flexibility to execute payroll changes related to new HR policies. And for us, an example of a change in policy was with the personal time off. And within the United States, we have different PTO accruals depending on your seniority. And Workday allows us to manage this accrual based on a person's work anniversary, and will immediately change the accrual upon hitting one of our milestones. We also recently had a policy change within the United Kingdom in which we changed the number of PTO days for a year. We were able to easily change this within the system and test to make sure it accrued accurately based on the new number of days. There are over 220 delivered standard reports for payroll within Workday, and the beauty of the standard reports is being able to copy and modify a report. It can be a large modification or a slight one. For us internally, we run an internal audit looking at PA localities to find any new localities we may need to register the business for. And I was able to take our employee census report, which is a Workday delivered report, and modify it to add the field of Pennsylvania local taxes. And from there, we were easily able to filter out any non-Pennsylvania residents and easily audit against our list of current accounts and identify which localities needed to be registered. We're also able to define and configure an unlimited number of variance audits. Usually one of the final reports we run during our biweekly payroll processing is a variance report. And the variance report we configured was made to identify any variance from the previous payroll that's larger than 5%, both positive and negative. And this allows us to ensure accuracy of payroll and eliminate any missing items such as time cards that have not been submitted. We're able to model and test changes within our sandbox tenant. And sandbox, as you can imagine, is just made to play around in. It's a replica of our production tenant that is refreshed weekly to allow us to test any changes prior to bringing them to our production tenant. It also allows us a platform to try and break the system, which I can attest to is a lot of fun to do, and get ahead of any potential roadblocks that we may face. All the bullet points described above is resulting in a new breed of payroll analysts, and the position is now less about administrative duties and more geared towards a deeper understanding of payroll and audit procedures. I sold cars for about 4 years prior to coming to Bioclinica and had very little payroll experience besides making sure my commissions were correct. And Workday allowed me to quickly gain an understanding of how payroll operates and the reasons behind some of the tasks that we do rather than just completing them. Moving on to number 7, which is real-time data and reporting. And there's one source of data for global workforce. And for us specifically, being in 18 different countries, it provides us kind of a one-stop shop for all payroll data of all employees. We're able to conduct real-time calculations. And what I mean by that is most payroll items are effective dated, whether it be a compensation change or an address change, et cetera. With Workday, we're able to enter in a payroll change with an effective date and have the peace of mind to know that the system will use that effective date when processing the payroll. So, for example, if an employee makes an address change that's effective August 1st, they don't have to wait until August 1st to enter the change. The system will maintain their old address until that effective date, and then it will make the change in the system. There's robust reporting for payroll and time tracking, and one of my favorite reports we run weekly in our payroll department is the unsubmitted, unapproved time report. And that allows us to pick a date range and supplies any time that is entered but not submitted by an employee, or any time that is submitted but not approved yet by the manager. It's really great for California employees to make sure that their time is approved regardless of any situation. And as a backup to that report, we also have a net pay zero report and a missing time report. And both allow us to see any non-exempt employees who may have a blank time card or missing time card information in their pay result. As Laura mentioned earlier, there is a user-defined criteria for reporting, and we have set those reports up to make sure we capture any time that is not pulling into payroll. There's also a manager dashboard, and the dashboard directly correlates to better decision-making based on information it displays. It gives us an overview of your team, showing items like headcount by job profile, compensation by job profile and tenure, outstanding actions for employees on your team, and even overtime cost and hours by month. So that's a really great tool that managers can use to kind of analyze their team. And with that, I will move it back to Kara.
Thanks, Matt. Our number 6 value realized is direct access to transparent data for employees and managers using both desktop and mobile. So the great feature about Workday is that there's a mobile app that people can download onto their smartphone. And so employees can request their time off through here. They can submit their time cards. Managers can approve the time cards through their Workday mobile app. But not only that, it also allows managers and employees to have the data at their fingertips. So if they're not at their desk when they're in a meeting, they're able to pull up some of the data immediately on their mobile app. Also, managers can delegate directly to somebody else when they're either on a leave of absence or taking a 2-week holiday vacation. So managers can reassign it, and it allows for timely completion of time cards so that we're not chasing down the managers to get everything completed. And so also there's a lot of different timely notifications and alerts in time cards, so it reminds employees to put their lunch breaks in. As Matt alluded, in California, it's a requirement. They can't submit their time card without putting in all of their information and their break time. So you can configure everything specific to even state versus company. So you can add into everything that you needed. And we have various reports that help us with the unsubmitted time, unapproved time, so we easily identify any of the outstanding time card issues. I would say since we went to Workday Payroll and time tracking, it decreased about we saw an 80% decrease in the amount of follow-up needed on time cards. There's still a few stragglers, as there always will be, but there's very few repeat offenders. And a lot of the feedback that we've received from managers and employees is how easy it is to use. There's a quick, easy search function, and it enables employees to submit their information, and they see it updated on the various sections. And with benefit carriers, once they submit their address changes, they see it take effect immediately. So we have very positive feedback from our workforce in general. Our number 5 value realized is easy integration for M&A activity. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we had 6 different entities before we went live with Workday Payroll. So it took time to, determine how we wanted to consolidate onto one platform. And since we went live with Workday Payroll, we've had 3 additional acquisitions, and it has been extremely easy to get everybody set up on the payroll side. It went from, I would say, months to having to get everybody input into the system to we were able to load everybody within a week of the merger and acquisition. And the time it takes to actually get that loaded is because we have to get the data. It's not because it takes that long to load in the system. It takes just seconds once we get the data and import it into the system. And we just configure the information on the back end to add the new payroll states and the account numbers and so forth. So it seamlessly goes into the new payroll system. Obviously, no payroll is going to want to go live mid-quarter. So for that reason, we do wait until the beginning of the next quarter after an acquisition. We don't just transition it mid-quarter, so we have a clean cutoff from the prior vendor. But we've had 3 since, and it's been very smooth. Even with a recent acquisition that we had in Florida, we had to configure a new time card methodology. We have a clock in and clock out feature now. We have a few employees that are actually in a clinic setting. So they're hourly, but we are required to track the clock in and clock out. And I would say even getting that set up, that was a new feature, but that was handled by our HRIS team. We didn't require any IT support. Went on to Workday Community and was able to easily find the resources to get that configured to remain compliant with their work location and other extracurricular activities. And with that being said, I will transition it back to Matt.
Thanks again, Kara. And our number 4 reason, automated workflow and approval within the system. So currently you're looking at our data change business process. And this is just one of the many business processes we have set up. Each approval chain can be different and have different approvals depending on what it is. So for example, this image is for a job change. And the way Bioclinica has it set up, we have the HR partner who kicks off the process. We have the proposed manager, the manager's manager, and the employee. And only once all of these approvals have occurred will the change take effect within the system. And you can set this up really any way that you'd like to, like I said previously, depending on what type of change it is. So if it's a compensation change, you can set that up to have more approvals and so on and so forth. Our number 3 value realized is a better user experience and employee engagement. The depiction on the right is of our employee pay dashboard, and each employee has access to their own dashboard. It shows them insights into pay history and a comparison between pay periods, as seen in the graph form in the top left corner of the picture there. It includes the ability for employees to view their pay slips and tax documents. And what we have found is with this, it has started to diminish the need for paper forms. So for example, at year end, we send out a notification all through Workday to all U.S. employees, giving them the option to opt out of paper W-2s. Employees can then easily log in and print out the W-2 form once it becomes available, which is typically much sooner than they would receive it by mail. Employees can also view and update data electronically. So tax elections are all done through Workday and the Pay Worklet. Employees are also required for us to update payment elections through Workday. What I've seen a lot in our company is people setting up multiple pay elections. So for example, if I wanted to set up a personal vacation fund that I contribute to all year, I can easily add in another bank account, and I can nickname it Vacation Fund and elect to put $50 per pay into that fund, and it will be easily directly deposited into that account. We have the ability to add external links into Employees Workday's homepage. So for example, if we wanted to have a link for work instructions on how to complete a certain task, like updating tax elections or payment elections, we can easily do so that every time somebody logs into Workday, there is a link there that they can easily access. In turn, this reduces the questions that come to HR and payroll, which gives us the flexibility to work on other high priority items and not to be constricted to answering employee questions, which we all know can take up a good time. Number 2 is amazing customer support. And what you're seeing on your screen is currently the Workday Community homepage. And as Kara kind of mentioned before, Workday Community is exactly what it sounds like. It's a place where you're able to collaborate with an entire community of Workday users. And most answers to our Workday questions originate from the Workday community. If you're having trouble finding an answer to your question, you always have the option to submit a question and have an entire community able to respond and answer to you. Another strong benefit to Workday Community is that everyone is using the same system, so there's no different versions that each company might have a specific way, or everyone can use the same lingo and understand what you're asking if necessary. Oftentimes you'll find people who have the exact same questions as you, and it has already been answered pretty quickly, I might add, and by many people. Kara mentioned it before, but a recent example we experienced was with the Oregon statewide transit tax, which was effective July 1st of 2018. We had a pay date on July 6th, and I was confused why this tax wasn't showing up in any of our Oregon employees' pay results. When I went on Community, I was able to find within 5 minutes of searching that if the pay period started prior to July 1st, the tax would not be effective yet. It would only be effective for the first pay period that began in July. In the case you're unable to find your answer on Workday Community or have a more significant question or issue, you can also submit tickets to Workday for direct communication with them. And there have been times where we haven't been able to properly describe the issue within the ticket, and I've gotten a response that didn't answer the question we had in mind. And in a situation like this, it's very easy to schedule some separate time to have a call with that person and resolve the issue quickly. And our number 1 value realized, switching to payroll in the cloud, is freedom to do payroll your way. Freedom is a really great adjective to be able to describe your payroll process, and moving to Workday has given us a single solution, one place to go for the hire to pay process. We're able to integrate outside vendors to Workday. We have the confidence to continuously remain compliant. We're able to create audit reports based on the specific items we audit and configure the fields that will make our audits most efficient and effective. It's extremely accessible from anywhere, taking into account Workday Mobile for managers and employees. There's an ease of integration for mergers and acquisitions, an automated workflow and approval process, the ease of seeing who viewed and approved changes without having to search for old emails that may include approvals. The user experience is clean, viewing and changing all data electronically. There's a readily available and easily accessible customer support with Community and the ticketing system. It has led to a growth of our staff, losing the administrative duties that often align with payroll. And we have reduced processing time and have had much more focused efforts. There's not the need to assist other departments like finance, because they can run the reports in Workday for the data that they need. Overall, we now have a best practice of collaboration. There's one system to use for all items that incorporate with payroll. And with that, I will hand it off to Jim.
And we're going to go into our questions. And our first question comes from Christine. And I guess this is going to be a kind of a combined question between Kara and Matt and Laurent as well. So Christine's a little bit concerned about security and hackers gaining access to the cloud and the information. So Matt and Kara, what were you looking at when you were looking at different vendors to see how they protected the data?
So I would actually even say to kind of add to that point, so right now in the United Kingdom, and they have that GDPR security event that's going on. It was effective May 25th, where the data privacy issue, a new ruling went into effect. And so just an example to talk about privacy and confidential information, Workday on Workday Community has everything posted on what procedures they were going to take to ensure they remain compliant with privacy of data. And there's different agreements that they required us to review and sign off on as well. So one of the things from a security standpoint is obviously, passwords can get stolen. So we have an actual added layer of protection that we use the Duo Mobile. So even though we have single sign-on, anytime you try to sign on to the Workday mobile app or outside of the Bioclinica network, you have to go to the Duo Mobile app and approve that you tried that sign-on. So that was just an added layer of security that we did in addition to what Workday provides. But we didn't even implement that at the time, and it wasn't because of Workday. It has to do with all of the various websites that we use for our various clients and data, because we're working with clinical trials. So there's a lot of protection that we have as an extra. So I wasn't as involved when we signed on for the protection of data and doing the RFP. That was handled by our HRIS team. So Laurent, I don't know if you have any more specifics that maybe you want to add on to the points that I just mentioned.
Well, not really. I think, and it's a common, obvious question from all customers that are not on the cloud. So what I would suggest is again, as I said in the slide at the beginning, for a cloud vendor such as Workday, security is the #1 mission, and we all know is that if security, if there's a breach or if the security is lacking, Workday will close. So we have a huge team working on this. How we have the largest security customers are using Workday themselves. So we work very closely with the best technical companies, and it's an everyday effort. But really, we have such high level of security that customers that use Workday truly have a peace of mind, because we have audits, we have reviews, we have, they have full visibility into what we use and how we secure the data, and have confidence. So I am not a technical expert, but what I would advise you is that if you're about to engage in the cloud, just go and talk to the cloud vendors and ask them, how do you handle security? And you will see how the depth of the solution and how well the information and all the multiple layers that Carol was talking about. On the internal side, there's also multiple, not just one, to secure the data.
Thanks for answering that question. It was a very good one. So the next question I have comes from John, and I think, Matt, this one might be addressed to you. And John wants to know, how does Bioclinica manage access to documents for terminated employees? Does the system allow access to terminated employees for a set period after they leave your organization?
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, that's a great question. So the way we have the system set up for terminated employees is part of our termination process is making sure that we do have a personal email for the employees within the system. And upon their termination, we will email them new access password, login for Workday. And the terminated access is different than if they were a current employee, where they can only access certain documents. So for example, any payslip documents or any year-end tax documents, they are able to access. And we don't have an end date for when when their access is terminated, but there is certainly the ability to give terminated employees access to the documents that are most important.
Thanks, Matt. And the next question I have, I think it could either be Kara or Matt answer, and it comes from Ella. And Ella would like to know, how are compliance updates handled?
So I can take that one. So the compliance updates are delivered automatically into the Workday platform. So what we just use the payroll dashboard for is to see what's going to be delivered and when it will be delivered. So there's no maintenance on our end that is needed to be done. But as Matt mentioned, we just, in our sandbox environment, we test it before the next payroll runs, make sure everything is functioning as accurate. So it's just automatically updated. So Workday does 2 actual updates per year, but then each week there's various smaller updates that are made from like a compliance standpoint.
Thanks a lot, Kara. And Laurent, I think this next question you might be able to address. Joe would like to know, what's the average deployment time for cloud payroll time implementations from your experience?
That's a great question, and obviously it depends. But what I can share with the audience is that at Workday, we've developed a methodology for small to medium customers. Let's say for the customers that have less than 3,000 employees. Now there's a methodology where you can very quickly load your data in the system and quickly see your payroll. So with this methodology, it can be from 4 to 8 months deployment. And then obviously the very large one, the big company, the 50,000 plus companies, this usually takes a year. It's more make sure that they understand the rules from their prior system, document. As we shared in the presentation, and Kara and Matt also shared, the configuration in the system is quick. It's really gathering all the information. But to answer your question shortly, small to medium customers, it can be from 4 to 8 months, and then the large one, it can be up to a year. That's what we see.
I think we've got time for one last question, and I'm not sure whether this one will be able to be answered by Kara or Matt, but it comes from Christine. And she wants to know, can employees clock in with the mobile app? And we had another, and I can't find the name of someone else who added to that kind of a question, was do you use geofencing to be able to know where they can clock in and can't clock in?
So I believe that there is a report that you can run that shows whether or not somebody clocks in from a desktop versus and the IP address, and it can provide more information. So to my knowledge, yes, they can log in and clock in via the mobile app, but there is also a way to run a report that shows where that came from.
Hey, thanks a lot, Kara. And Laurent, would you like to make some closing remarks for us today?
Absolutely. So let's go for okay, so let's wrap the session with the key takeaways. So the first one is embrace, so for all the audience here, and really we mean this, but my advice is really embrace payroll and time tracking in the cloud. So if you are in a situation where you need to upgrade your on-premise solution or to renew your payroll outsourcing subscription, I really would advise you to look at the cloud solution, because as you heard today, you'll get a lot of benefits, and the life of your payroll team will be much better. Second key takeaway here, don't just look at a system replacement. Review and optimize your business processes and automate to gain efficiency. This seems obvious, but there are still a lot of customers that when they move to the cloud, they want to replicate, re-implement the same business processes they've had in the old system. And by doing this, obviously they miss and they don't fully get the benefits of the new cloud solution. And my last key takeaway here, choose a reliable system that allows for the flexibility and scalability you need in order to continue growing. Don't think at your current requirement and size, as you heard today from Kara, but look at your needs and if your company acquires other businesses and, for example, double the size in the next 2 to 5 years, will the system provide the required flexibility and scalability to meet your needs? Jim, back to you for the closing remarks.
Thanks a lot, Laurent. And I want to thank Laurent, Kara, and Matt for sharing us the successes that Bioclinica has seen by moving their payroll and HR applications to the cloud. And we definitely want to thank Workday for sponsoring today's webinar. Workday is a leading provider of payroll and workforce management solutions. Now, we want to know what you think about today's webinar because your comments are essential to the development and continuing success of our webinar series. Immediately after today's webinar ends, APA's online evaluation form for this webinar will appear on your screen. Now, if you're a CPP or an FPC and you've met the required viewing time as stated in the 24-hour reminder email, your certificate of completion with your RCHs will be emailed to you. Now, if you're a CPA and you need CPE credits, don't forget to download that CPE form, and it's found in the handout window. Have you heard about APA's online subscription-based payroll reference library, Payroll Source Plus? It contains 4 of our most popular publications, including the Guide to State Payroll Laws and the Payroll Source. Being online, these resources are updated throughout the year as legislative and regulatory changes occur. The Payroll Source Plus can be used on your computer, your laptop, your tablet, and even your smartphone. For more information about the Payroll Source Plus, visit APA's online store today. You can make your work in payroll more than just a job. You can make it a career by getting involved as a member of the APA. It's not just the prestige you'll gain, but the performance that everyone will notice. You can make a life-changing move by becoming an active member of the American Payroll Association. Are you wondering how tax reform impacts your payroll processes? Are you getting questions from your employees how tax reform, in fact, impacts their withholding? Have you seen the IRS's draft of the 2019 Form W-4? These questions and many more will be answered during the 4-part Payroll Tax Forum On Demand webinar series that will be available for your viewing later in July. You can register for the Payroll Tax Forum On Demand webinar series today at americanpayroll.org. Please remember to complete your evaluation of today's program. Thank you very much for joining us. This concludes our webinar.